Pumped to be joined by Isabel, Liesl, and Sam today from Anine Bing On and Aura Home, respectively. We'll do some quick intros just so everybody can share a little bit about what they do. And then we'll spend most of the time talking about two processes I'm sure most of the people on this call are familiar with, month-end closes and variance analysis. And then as you're thinking about questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll save at least 10 minutes at the end to talk through some of that Q&A. And we can get in and do some demos of Parabola and things like that as we go if relevant. So to start with intros, I'm Alex, CEO of Parabola. I started my career doing a lot of the messy spreadsheet work behind the scenes for some large retail and CPG brands, lots of business case models and things like that. Now at Parabola, we're building a tool to help ops and finance teams automate a lot of that messy data work, spreadsheets, PDFs, et cetera, that they've resigned themselves to thinking about doing manually. We're helping, some of that is by helping use some of the newest large language model features. And some of that's just helping get some of the really awesome subject matter expertise inside all of your heads out into a somewhat more automatable format. So why don't we quickly start with interest from everybody else. Tell us a little bit about your role, maybe career so far, and one initiative you're currently focused on that's helping move the business forward. Isabel, why don't we start with you?
Sure, I can go ahead. Hi, everyone. I'm Isabel Boyadjian, Senior Vice President of Strategic Finance and Operations at Anine Bing. AB is a global women's luxury apparel brand operating in over 80 countries. I joined the company just over 6 years ago when we were about a 20 million business with about 60 employees. And since then, I've had the opportunity to help scale the company past the 100 million revenue mark. And we're now a team of around 250 employees worldwide. Prior to Anine Bing, I was in strategy consulting for 4 years. And then before that in sales and marketing. So my love affair with data didn't really start until I joined the strategy consulting firm. And then it's just been all about automating as much as possible since then. One of the key initiatives I'm focused on right now is profitable growth. It's what the company's kind of focused on as well. So just ensuring every strategic decision we make not only grows our top line, but also strengthens our bottom line. So we're being super hyper focused on leveraging data, running analysis, and just being really disciplined in our actions so that we can continue to scale efficiently. So truly believe AI and automation can play a powerful role in unlocking that. And so I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation with everyone today.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Liesl, how about you next?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Liesl Nebel. I am the head of accounting for Americas region for ON. This includes US, Canada, LATAM, and Brazil. I started my career with PwC, started in audit in Seattle. I actually spent most of my time in Europe with the capital markets advisory services. And then when I went into private, very corporate focused accounting. So I spent time at Intel, I spent time at Nike. I also spent my time at a much smaller company, Schoolhouse, a home good company. So totally different lens from private company to very small company, no audit, and very manual. And then before joining ON, spent 3.5 years consulting. So excited to be here. I think for us, it's really kind of along the point that Isabel talked about. It's at a point where we are, where it's such high growth. How do you grow intentionally and thoughtfully, and also grow your employees and their development? And that's where our use of Parabola came in.
Awesome. And Sam, why don't you round us out?
Cool. Hi, everyone. It's awesome to be here. I'm Sam Howell, Director of Finance at Aura Home Inc. We are also known as Aura Frames. We make digital picture frames. So all of those pictures on your phone, you can send them to your frame and invite friends and family to send pictures as well. We're in retail and we're in B2C, Amazon, and Shopify in the US, Canada, UK, France, and Germany. And a little bit about me and my role. I have grown up a lot here. I've been with the company for 7 years, and I was the first internal finance hire. So it's been, really exciting to be a part of the growth of this company. I came in, we were at $1 million. Now we're closer, we're in the 9 figures. So we've started our accounting work in QuickBooks, and we've developed into NetSuite, and we've done analysis in Google Sheets, and now we're using more tools, and we have an FP&A platform. We use Parabola. So we've been able to develop processes and evolve and automate a lot. So it's really great to be here. Some other things I work on, just budgeting, monthly budget variance analyses, treasury, capital raising, and just one initiative that I'm focused on is always profitable growth, like Isabel and Liesl have said, and with us. We're also managing the ever-changing tariff situation. So we're forecasting, reforecasting, and doing a lot of modeling and building in assumptions to make sure that we're just up to date on as much information as we can be up to date on.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know your business obviously has some pretty strong seasonality, as maybe a lot of people's do here. So I'm sure there'll be some good questions on forecasting.
Holiday, yep.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so for the accounting folks here, maybe everybody, but certainly the accounting folks here, I think month-end close is a big part of like the cadence of your day-to-day work. So maybe to start with Liesl, before Parabola, what were some of the pain points your team was focused on around just month-end close? What was easy? What was hard? What were you trying to improve on?
Yeah, I mean, we're using Parabola, but we still have these pain points because we're on this journey. Like many growth companies, our pain points are really when you come to that inflection point of where, like I mentioned before, you have to be much more intentional about your growth and strategic about your growth, and as opposed to growing heads and really being thoughtful about it. You don't want to grow just because of operational growth. So you don't want to grow because you have more month-end close journals. You don't want to grow because your company's growing that results in more accounting or you have more reporting. So for us, coming to look at tools and where we are on that continuum, prior to kind of really embracing that and thinking through what those next steps are, our pain points, like many other companies, include system challenges, system connectivity challenges. So, we love a good spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet. We love Google Sheets. But, we have so many interconnected systems. And so from a system perspective, if you look at some of our commentary on our team, that's definitely a pain point. And results in increased manual work. So we're pretty, prior to using Parabola, very manual in terms of some of our accounting activities. As our region and our talent has grown, we've also been able to take on more activities within the Americas from our corporate headquarters. So our corporate headquarters are in Europe. And of course, as the company started and has grown, a lot of the activities from an accounting and a finance perspective sat in Europe. And now that our team is growing and our talent is growing, we're able to take on more of that because we have that knowledge here in the geography. That also results in increased workload. And then just the growth of the business. Sam and Isabel, you talked about how your company has grown. And as you grow, you're not just selling a pair of running shoes anymore. There's so many other aspects of the business, which results in complexity from a close perspective, complexity from a timing of close perspective, additional reporting needs. So but also right now, those are the operational things that our team is working through.
Yeah, that makes sense. As right before this, we were talking a little bit about the trade-off between having more people who could maybe help do some of that thing, and also maybe more people in this case are adding coordination cost, it sounds like. How are you all thinking about using technology to improve that process versus just kind of like throwing people at the problem?
I can start and then I can pass off to Isabel and Sam, since I kind of continued on from what I was saying before. Like, we are at that inflection point. So for us, again, it's about being intentional. So we kind of are looking at it as our parabola usage started with actually our global team sitting in Zurich from a tax perspective. And so as we within our region were looking for tools and started that conversation, naturally it was just a conversation of, oh, they're using this tool, maybe we can use it. So our America's indirect tax team brought it on and had such a great success from a time savings. And then you share that in a meeting, and now it's grown globally, accounting and finance. There's been a huge adoption of the tool, but also, there's a continuum. So right now, as we think about our growth and our focus, it's, how can we use our shared service capabilities, and where is that appropriate, and where can we use parabola, and where is that appropriate, and then how do we think of other things like robotics automation? So it's kind of looking across the board and what those activities are and what makes sense. But I would say that's where we are on our journey right now.
Yeah, and for people, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna. There's one more follow up on for Liesl. I was just gonna ask, as you're specifically for teams who are hoping to have, the scale that you all are getting to, and make sure they're able to have their teams be lean as they get there. Is there any really specific part of that, a month end close process, where you've had the most, low hanging fruit to speed up time, add automation, get rid of some of that coordination time?
Yeah, I would say the ones where we've seen a lot of success, both globally and within region, it's where you have a lot of data. It's more than one time a month, and it's a very manual process that maybe a few people are attached to. So whether it's, monthly indirect tax reporting and the data that you have to pull in and the reporting you have to do, it's payroll journal entries, which if you're in retail in a specific states could be on a weekly basis, and the manual nature of that, and getting reports from an external agency, having to do the data inside and then post it. And then also, as we think about marketplaces and, being in a wide variety of countries in Europe, for example, and being able to bring all of those reports into one workflow that you can then replicate by country and have an easy upload. We've seen a lot of success. So I think the starting point is, what's the frequency of that? What's the amount of data, and the touch points that you have is really kind of those easy touch points where you're able to think, well, maybe this is a great starting point for our team.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, yeah, we have a couple different entities. So we have to close each month and then also consolidate. And, when I started and we had just opened up some of the entities, we were consolidating via Excel. Our accountants were doing a lot of manual work, but we brought those entities onto NetSuite, and now we're just able to do it in the system. It's a lot faster. We're able to get fully consolidated financials each month, and present them. So just over time, bringing things, making things automated, bringing things onto the ERP and the system. It's all just making everything a lot easier and faster.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have any sort of rule of thumb for how much of it you need to automate to stay ahead of the complexity that you all are adding?
I think we just I feel like right now we're in a good spot where we've been able to sort of automate everything, but we're also bringing in new tools. I think we have this one called Blackline, which is helping us with accruals and some other transactions, journal entries, and just sort of automatically making sure everything matches up and is good to go, so the books can close even faster. But I think it's always, what else can we do to get faster, to bring the close in? Always looking at other tools.
Cool. Yeah, going to switch to talking through some of that variance analysis and forecasting in a second. But Isabel, any thoughts on how you all are thinking about where month-end close is easy or where it's painful?
Yeah, I mean, I think I third everything that Sam and Liesl said. So for us, it's kind of looking at, where we're spending the crux of our time, what's manual, and then where is there opportunity to automate. So for us, it was not only kind of like getting out of the spreadsheets as we grew. So, tracking leases when we were 5 doors is very different to tracking leases when we're, 40 doors and kind of, worldwide, or looking at our amortization schedules or just our AP automation as, the number of vendors grew and the more kind of software and services we took on as a business. That's a lot of our kind of inflection point, right? We hate adding people just for the sake of adding people and want everyone to be kind of focused on strategic, high impact kind of work. But then also for us to, putting my operations hat on as well, there's a lot of upstream processes that happen that essentially, trigger downstream that I say always is going to ultimately hit operations and accounting. And so for me, it's also just spending a lot of time in those upstream processes, running analysis to see, why is our kind of, junior accountant spending time cleaning up globally invoices, or, why aren't credit memos making their way through the system? So it's not only that data matching. So we use Parabola to do quite a bit of that to make sure that we're automating that piece and kind of surfacing those fairly throughout the month, but then working with our solutions and our systems to automate a lot of the manual pain points that are coming down the line for our accounting team.
Yeah, so much of what accounting or just finance in general does is like cleaning up other people's messes, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you think about how far up into that like stack you can go, or into that process you can go?
I mean, I'll go as far as it takes me. So, it's I can be looked at as fairly annoying within our company because I'm constantly asking why, so if revenue is not coming through between the systems, or things are kind of falling between the cracks, I'll go all the way up to design or production based on ETA dates, or, go to our 3PLs to understand why invoices aren't coming through on time. It really just depends on what the situation is, but, really going to the root cause and figuring it out up there, because it typically leaves like a trail of bodies, right, by the time it gets to accounting. So to me, it's just kind of getting it as far up there as possible.
Yeah, I love that. Any role like that where you see what the end result actually looks like, there's so much power in being able to go back and say we could like make everything so much easier if we just had this like root cause thing fixed.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk about some of that as we also switch over into thinking through that other use case, like variance analysis and some forecasting. Where maybe specifically Isabel and Sam, but at least also if you have thoughts, like where does your team spend the most time right now when you're digging into budget versus actuals, and maybe what's upstream of causing those problems, and like how do you actually like know even where to start?
We're a consumer products company like Liesl and Isabel, and we move a lot of product. So we're moving stuff in, we're moving stuff out to our customers and retailers. So our selling expenses and our distribution and warehousing costs are ones that we, really end up looking at a lot each month during the budget variance analyses. We do use Parabola to help us digest a lot of the complicated invoices that we have, especially from our 3PLs, which have expenses that are sort of grouped all over, they're all grouped together. And Parabola helps us sort of dissect, what's from our direct to consumer, what's Amazon, what's Shopify, what's retail, where are our returns coming from, what channels. And, when I first started with the company, doing that manually just took forever and it was almost an impossible task. So that's definitely one of the things that has been really helpful, as we're able to automate and sort of get more information. And, once you have the expense information, it's a lot It's a lot more easy to sort of forecast it in the future, whether you go super granular or you're looking at sort of averages over time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I second that. That's exactly kind of where my head went to. So historically for us, we were spending a lot of time figuring out what the variances were rather than why, the why behind them. And so over time, we've kind of chipped away at that inefficiency by streamlining the analysis that we're doing across like each cost bucket. So just depending on what our largest cost buckets are, kind of focusing in on that and honing in to where we can get as granular as possible and kind of do those budget versus actuals analysis. So like, for instance, if we're looking at vendor spend, like we were working closely with accounting to ensure consistent data coding, working with the department leads when we're running our budget cycle to make sure that we're budgeting each vendor kind of consistently with how the coding is coming through to just minimize the amount of cleanup that needs to happen at the end. And then we've also built a lot of plug and play kind of Excel models that flag and, highlight the areas of risk and opportunity. And then, like Sam mentioned, we do use that to kind of guide our forecasts in the future, right? And like understand if something's a one-off or do we need to have a conversation with one of the departments because they're kind of going overboard in terms of how they're using certain aspects of these vendors. So we're still kind of fairly manual. I think I'm really excited at some point where AI can kind of come in and like supercharge this process, replacing the Excel model, but also offering real-time commentary on the variances, like surfacing potential adjustments we may need to make to our forecasts or even maybe alternative scenarios that we might not have thought about. So I think for us, we're still a ways away from that, but we're fairly focused on just making sure our foundation is in as good of a place as possible, and then kind of taking baby steps, to make our lives easier in terms of that variance analysis that we're performing.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Liesl, like where do you see accounting's role in being able to collaborate to help get that like higher quality analysis, better forecasting, kind of what have you seen be like a successful relationship there?
Yeah, I mean partnership. I would say to Isabel's point, we're still pretty manual, and so we are kind of at this beginning phase of using tools, Parabola being one of them. We're not unique, but many of our activities are kind of shared between controlling and accounting. So some things that might at a traditional US company be more of accounting activities, a lot of our finance team members are doing that. So there is a lot of partnership as we naturally work through roles and responsibilities and growth, but just making sure we are side by side through the close process, through the reporting process. So we're very connected from that lens. I think to Isabel's point, we're still at that beginning phase of actually using the tools. And I think to your point, Isabel, where you can use those tools to just generate commentary, I think you can do the same thing on a financial statement perspective. Like, how are you creating notes to your financial statements or commentary in your reporting deck? So I think there's a lot of possibilities and where we've just started this explore. But for us right now, it's more of we're just connected in the processes, in the tool creation. This had me think about, we just had a global accounting meeting with our global team members, and one of our strategic as a company focuses is innovation and automation. Innovation, of course, from a product perspective, which you all have, but as we think about how it relates to finance, the focus of that offsite was innovation. And each of the individual kind of separate 7 teams had to come up with 3 goals for how we're going to use automation and innovation in our roles. And as we think about our America's finance team, our plan is to replicate that as we think about coming together and, okay, how did we do in 2025 and what are our goals? So even though we are accounting and finance, you know, the focus is still there from a innovation perspective. But beginning of the journey, but I'm excited about what we've seen so far and where we can go.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's interesting that all three of you mentioned some combo of tons of opportunity to automate things, getting started, which is exciting, and also only kind of scratching the surface.
Yeah.
I hear from like pretty much every company we talk to this, like, well, what are other companies doing? Like, is our new company like farther out ahead of us? Like, you know, are we behind, or like how do we stack rank? And I think everybody is like currently in that mode. And I think realizing that over the next year or two, but maybe even just next year, really need to like do a lot of like tech transformation to keep up with how fast the world is changing. And so curious to hear for you three, like what's easy and probably more like what's hard about adopting new tools, AI specifically? Is it hard to get buy-in from the team? Is it hard to like cut through the noise? Is it hard to just take the time to pick your head up out of your day-to-day work? Like where do you kind of run into roadblocks right now?
I can get started just because I was just kind of on that path. I think for us, the big win this year was getting a global parabola contract. So we all are kind of behind the tool and can use it and utilize it. So that was a huge win of like, okay, now we can move forward. I think really it's just finding the time and carving out that time and being very focused and not letting kind of the day-to-day take over, because it really is that investment at the beginning that will pay off in the end. But it is hard when you do have lean organizations like we do to really make time for that. So that's been a lot of, as we're at mid-year right now and having performance conversations, a lot of it is, okay, where's the opportunity for the second half of the year? And a lot of that is focused in, how do I take the time to focus on these strategic things, get through close, and focus on the strategic things to make close even better going forward?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely like taking the time and trying to find the time to decide where I want to use AI, where I want to use automation, because sometimes you might think, oh, it's just easier to do the thing manually or however we used to do it rather than discover a new way to make it faster for the future. But I think, you know, Aura is pretty excited about adopting AI. We have our own Slack channel where we put ideas and share interesting articles, and you know, our engineers are using Cursor to help us code more easily. And for me personally, we use Metabase, which is a huge database that we use for dashboards and tracks all sorts of KPIs. And I use ChatGPT to help me make edits to some of the SQL code and you know, make updates to some charts that we have. You know, if I want to update something to show data from 2025 instead of 2024, you know, it's pretty easy to just put that in there. And, you know, we've also used ChatGPT to look at, you know, creditworthiness of our retail partners, and, you know, instead of having to read a bunch of articles and, you know, dive into reports. But yeah, we're just trying to figure out how we can use it, figure out how we can help us do things better and faster.
It's so funny that you just mentioned that about the credit worthiness, because when I was getting ready for this call, I was thinking about like my dream use cases for AI, and one of them was looking at our wholesale partners. Like we have over 400 around the world, and kind of saying, okay, what's assigning a risk, you know, to them based on exactly like the news articles and things like that. Like you can't Google every single one of them, you know. But having a risk score would be amazing. That, you know, you don't have to work with like kind of an outside credit party or a factor party on that. But anyway, yeah. And I was, so some of the other things that I was thinking about in terms of barriers, again, like limited budgets. So I think for us, we definitely have the bandwidth resource problem, but it's also just every initiative is competing for attention and for dollars. And so, you know, assigning the proper return to the different projects, and then making sure that, you know, we're communicating that well so that AI or automations end up on the like go list and not on the back burner because there's some other initiative that gives the immediate ROI. And then I think also it's kind of, it can be daunting to adopt automations for a couple of reasons. So one is just the cleanliness of data, like I mentioned, and kind of your starting point, and how much work and lift is it going to be to get going. And then also there's so much tech out there, and especially everyone's kind of billing themselves as AI. And so how do you filter through that to the real proven use cases to say, okay, this is the one that I want to go with, especially when resources are stacked. Like even myself, who has visibility quite a bit throughout the whole company of what we're doing, what we want to do. And I'm very interested in tech. Even for me, sometimes I get scared to put something forward because, if it's not fully tried and true. So that's why Parabola was for me easy to sell in. It was a low lift, no code. We implemented it fairly quickly. And yes, there was a learning curve, but it didn't take a lot of tech resources in order to get that up and running. And so I think, it doesn't, to me, tech doesn't always have to be, big, full scale, like transformations. It's also, what are the small little like low hanging fruit that we can do to shave off an hour of someone's time a week, or whatever it is. So, and then sometimes it's fun, like finding the champions internally. Like I love the Slack channel idea, like finding people who are excited about it within the company, because then they'll just, spend the time in wanting to do these things and kind of help out throughout the company. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're starting to kind of get at one of the questions that was in the chat here. So other than just signing up and trying Parabola, which of course everybody should do, but other than that, like what do you see as some of that lowest hanging fruit? Question for any of the three of you: lowest hanging fruit to get into some of that more granular, more helpful, maybe more like real time reporting that can help the team really take action.
So I think, I don't really have any particular tools to recommend right off the bat. I mean, we've talked about Parabola, obviously, there's kind of the tools that you can use for everyone to kind of collaborate on and things like that. But in my view, it's always, it starts with the question, like, what am I doing? How often am I doing this? Like I mentioned, you don't have to do a full AI transformation, but it's just like looking at your team's workflows, like where are we spending time copying data into systems or cleaning spreadsheets or, doing the same analysis over and over again, and asking the question, is there something I can do in order to make this easier? And that could start with just, a conversation with your accounting team in terms of how they're coding data. Like they may not even be aware, right? So for us, my team hates it sometimes. Like we have a spreadsheet of opportunities, and in there it's like you just put, it's like a running tracker of kind of the problems you're running into or the areas you see where we could do things better. And then what's kind of a low, medium, high, like a crawl, a walk, run situation to getting that to like full automation, and what's kind of attainable to you. So that's kind of how we approach it. And we don't invest a ton in automations. And so I know, like I mentioned Parabola, but it was an easy tool to get kind of onboarded, to do that kind of crawl, walk, run.
Yeah, I think to your point, Isabel, going off of that, I think for us, it's also how are we utilizing our existing systems, because they might be pain points, but we also might not be utilizing them the most efficient way possible, or unlocking things that we just don't even know about. So for us, it's also exploring our current systems and, rethinking if we implemented the system today, what decisions would we have made, and maybe how would we have set it up, and benchmarking with other team members of what capabilities are there that I just don't know that that exist, but I didn't even know exist. So yeah, I think we're the same in that we don't have these big tools, a list of tools. It's been Parabola, but then also how do we utilize the tools that we have better and more intelligently?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, even in our budgeting processes, we're always like, okay, we have these vendors, we're using these tools. are we actually getting what we want out of them? Are they worth sort of keeping on the roster, or should we, stop using them? But it's always a matter of sort of evaluating our old tools and also looking at new ones to see, how we can just make our processes better, make them faster, and how we can improve them.
Cool. As more questions trickle in, we also have Adam here from our marketing team, who any of you who've watched basically any of our videos should recognize. He's done our whole Parabola University series and other things. And he can just quickly show like a little bit more specificity on what some of these use cases we're actually talking about look like behind the scenes and at some of the other companies we work with.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alex. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And you might be wondering, like, what are those like truly lowest hanging fruit opportunities? So here's just a quick list of some of those. We see a lot centered around the month-end close process, as we kind of hit on, whether that is journal entry prep, where we're pulling data from a bunch of siloed channels, or parsing invoices and actually mapping all of those invoice lines to different GL accounts. We also see a lot around things like accrual calculations, the category of reconciliations, variance analysis. Feel free to take a screenshot of this for hopefully some helpful inspiration on kind of where to get started here. But just to show you really quickly, like, what does it actually look like when the individuals on this call are talking about some of those opportunities? Jumping into a quick example of a parabola flow here. This is the 2-minute version of Parabola. Right now we're on the canvas where there are really 3-4 types of steps to actually build these workflows. The first of which are steps to pull in data from all the different sources in your stack. We've heard from a couple of the operators on this call, like, one of the hardest parts is just gathering and then cleaning your data from all of these different sources. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. So we do have integrations with tools like Shopify, Amazon, NetSuite, all those tools that you're typically starting that data consolidation process with. And from there, it's really about all of the manual repetitive things you have to do to transform that from the source to something that's actually usable and in the right format for your different tools. So that might be something like splitting columns, standardizing data, and then even using steps where you can kind of just type in plain language how you want to transform your data. And then we use AI behind the scenes to actually do that transformation and apply it to your data. And so one of the places where I think this becomes really interesting is when we're doing something like, hey, here we have a data set of 139 rows. How do we actually go from this to the journal entry format I need it in? We can do something like a custom transform step where we're using that AI to say, hey, create a GL entry for Shopify and Amazon revenue. These are the columns I need. We need date, we need revenue. This is how we need it formatted. And we can actually go from all of that data to just our 2 rows for our entries, all in kind of one step there. And so if you were kind of going to start building something like this from scratch and you're like, this seems kind of intimidating, I'm coming from a world of spreadsheets, just wanted to kind of show you what it looks like to actually start from scratch here. So in this canvas, we do have this little chat here where I can just kind of say, help me build a flow to create GL entries. Here's the steps we're going to use. Here's the process. And Parabola will kind of give you an overview of exactly how we need to start pulling and gathering data. It'll add steps to the canvas. And ultimately, if we are going to add one more prompt here, just to help us actually format our data and then export that CSV file, it would ultimately help us finish the swing, add the right steps directly to the canvas. Hopefully it works for the live demo here. But ultimately, just to make building really, really easy and not as daunting to kind of get started. While I have the screen up and we watch Parabola kind of hopefully round this out, Sam, Liesl, Isabel, anything I missed that you'd add that you kind of think about when you describe Parabola?
I mean,
Yeah,
I think you nailed it. I mean,
Yeah.
It's just the AI automations that you guys introduced make things so much easier in terms of getting things up and running, like cleansing of the data. And just, once you get it, once you work in it for a bit and kind of, work out how it works, it's just essentially taking your kind of logic, of the steps that you would take and just kind of formatting them into Parabola.
Yeah, I was going to say user-friendly, and I think the partners from Parabola that help our team members along the road in terms of like setting it up and getting started. So I would say that support, that human support, has been really helpful as well.
Yeah,
Cool.
super easy to use. You don't have to like code or anything. You can sort of use simple English to type in your prompts, and the system will work for you.
Well, in our last few minutes here, what for people listening who have some ideas of processes that maybe could be automated, they're maybe not totally sure, they're not sure if they have budget, but they think they should, where would you all recommend they get started? Just kind of chipping away at the like, hey, we need to start automating some of our process.
I mean, I think, like I had mentioned earlier, I think just getting started, kind of making the list of where you see opportunities and, talking not only internally, but also externally to maybe your peers at other companies, like what are they doing? Both Liesl and Sam mentioned quite a bit of tools and processes that they have that I'm interested in and want to learn more about, and will likely reach out to you and ask about. So I think, just gathering the information that you can, putting that list together, and then just, taking baby steps to get going.
Yeah, I second that. It's just the getting the started, whether it's this that we're talking about or any other organizational goals we have. It's just getting started and doing that little bit each moment and benchmarking. But to what we had talked about before, like identifying where could you get an easy win, for lack of a better term, of where could you really try it out and see the how in doing it, but also see that operational benefit as well.
Yeah, exactly what Liesl and Isabel said. Just start small, try to look at a couple problems that you have, a couple ways that you think you can find a boost, and see if there's any sort of product that can help. Parabola can help. You could maybe ask ChatGPT, how AI can help, or if that can help. But start small, and then it'll go from there. Just getting started, I think, is the hardest part.
Totally. Yeah, I think and once you get started, hopefully you're automating some of your time and can use that free time to find even more things. So hopefully that all really compounds. Well, awesome. Isabel, Liesl, Sam, thank you so much for the conversation. And well, thank you on behalf of the people watching who can't speak right now, that they found it very informative, I'm sure. Thanks everybody else for joining, and see you all in the next one.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.